There's this weird phenomenon I've noticed over the years, and it's something that doesn't get talked about nearly enough. Some of the smartest, most educated, most capable people I know are completely broke. And I'm not talking about broke because they made obviously stupid decisions or got unlucky. I'm talking about broke despite doing everything that's supposed to lead to financial success. They went to good schools, got solid degrees, landed decent jobs, read all the right books about money and investing. They understand compound interest. They know they should be saving and investing. They can explain the difference between a Roth IRA and a traditional IRA. And yet, somehow, they have no money. Their net worth is embarrassingly low for their age and income level. They're living paycheck to paycheck despite making $80,000 or $100,000 or more. And the reason is always the same. It's not that they're spending money on stupid stuff. It's that they're spending money on smart stuff. Or at least stuff that sounds smart when you explain it. They've fallen into what I call the intelligent trap, which is using logic and reasoning to justify purchases that are keeping them poor. My name is Drew, and I've seen this pattern so many times that I can spot it within 5 minutes of talking to someone about their finances. If you're educated, intellectually curious, and somehow still broke despite knowing better, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button, because what I'm about to explain is probably going to feel like I'm reading your bank statements. Here's how the intelligent trap works. Smart people don't impulse buy things they don't need. They're not walking through Target throwing random stuff in their cart. They're not buying designer clothes to impress people or leasing expensive cars they can't afford. At least they don't think they are. Instead, they make what seem like rational, well-reasoned purchasing decisions. Every expense has a justification. Every purchase has been researched and optimized. They're not being reckless with money. They're being strategic. Except that strategy is somehow leaving them with no money at the end of every month. Let me give you the most common version of this, and I guarantee this is going to hit home for a lot of you. It's what I call optimization spending, which is when you buy things because they'll theoretically make you more productive, more efficient, more capable, or more successful in the future. You're not buying stuff for no reason. You're investing in yourself. At least that's how you frame it in your head. Let's start with productivity tools, because this is probably the clearest example. Smart people love productivity tools. Apps, software, gadgets, anything that promises to help them work better, faster, or more efficiently. And here's the thing. They actually research this stuff. They're not just randomly buying things. They read reviews, watch YouTube videos, compare features. They make informed decisions. Then they subscribe to Notion for their note-taking system, Todoist for task management, Evernote because they heard it's better for certain things, Roam Research for networked thinking, Obsidian as a backup system, Readwise to sync their highlights, and Instapaper to save articles they'll definitely read later. That's already like $30 to $40 a month on productivity apps alone, or $400 to $500 a year. And for what? To feel slightly more organized while accomplishing basically the same amount of work they would have done with a free notes app and a to-do list. But it gets worse because productivity tools are just the gateway drug. Smart people start thinking about optimization in every area of their life. They need the right equipment for everything. If they decide to start working out, they don't just go to a regular gym. They need the gym with the best equipment, or better yet, they need to build a home gym so they can optimize their time by not commuting. So they drop $2,000 to $3,000 on a squat rack, barbell, plates, a bench, maybe a rowing machine, or bike. And they use it religiously for about 6 weeks before it becomes an expensive clothes hanger. But at the time of purchase, it made perfect sense. They calculated that a gym membership costs $50 a month, so over 5 years, that's $3,000, which is basically the same as the home gym equipment. Plus, they're saving time by not commuting. The logic was airtight. The execution was non-existent. Or take cooking. A smart person decides they should cook more at home to save money, which is actually a good idea. But they don't just start cooking with the equipment they already have. They need to optimize the process. They need the right knife, which means researching chefs' knives for hours and spending $150 on a Japanese blade. They need a proper cutting board. That's another $60. They need a Dutch oven for braising, $200. A good cast iron skillet, $80. An immersion blender, a food processor, a stand mixer, a sous vide circulator because they read it's the best way to cook steak. They've now spent $1,700 on kitchen equipment to optimize their cooking process, and they're making basically the same 3 meals they were making before with their old pots and pans. But each purchase made sense in isolation because they researched it and found that yes, this tool does make this specific task easier or better. What they didn't calculate was whether they actually needed to make that task easier or whether the improvement justified the cost. Then there's the whole world of education and self-improvement, and this is where smart people really hemorrhage money. Because investing in yourself is supposed to be good, right? That's what every successful person says. So they buy courses. So many courses. There's a Udemy course on Python programming because learning to code could open up new career opportunities. That's $50. There's a Coursera specialization in data science, another $200. There's a masterclass subscription because learning from the best is obviously valuable. That's $180 a year. There's that course on real estate investing, $300. The course on options trading, $400. The course on starting an online business, $500. They've got a Kindle library full of books on productivity, investing, business, psychology, all of which cost $10 to $30 each, and they've read maybe 20% of them. They've got an Audible subscription at $15 a month so they can listen to more books, most of which they don't finish. And here's the kicker with all of this education spending. Smart people can justify every single purchase with completely logical reasoning. Learning Python could increase their earning potential. Understanding data science is a valuable skill in today's economy. The Masterclass subscription costs less than most courses and gives access to dozens of world-class instructors. Real estate investing could create passive income. Options trading could accelerate wealth building. The business course could lead to a side hustle. Every purchase has a theoretical positive ROI. The problem is that theoretical and actual are not the same thing. In reality, they took 2 lessons of the Python course before getting distracted. The data science specialization is still sitting in their course library untouched 6 months after purchase. They watched 2 masterclasses and forgot they were paying for it. The real estate course didn't lead to any actual real estate purchases. The options trading course just made them realize it's complicated and risky. The business course is still on their to-do list to start someday. But here's what makes this particularly insidious for smart people. They're not wrong about the value of these things. Learning to code does have value. Understanding investing is important. Taking courses can lead to better opportunities. The logic is sound. The problem is the execution. Smart people are really good at identifying what would be valuable to know or do or have, and really bad at honestly assessing whether they're actually going to follow through. They buy based on their ideal self, the person they imagine they could be, if they just had the right tools and knowledge. But they don't account for the person they actually are, which is someone with limited time and energy and competing priorities who's probably not going to finish another online course. Let me give you another version of this that's super common. Smart people love researching purchases to find the optimal choice, which sounds responsible, but often leads to spending way more than necessary. They don't just buy something that works. They buy the best version after hours of research. They need a backpack, so they spend 6 hours reading reviews on Reddit and watching YouTube comparisons and deep diving into fabric durability and zipper quality and organizational features. They emerge from this research rabbit hole convinced that they need the $250 backpack instead of the $80 one because it's objectively better based on all the factors they've analyzed. And maybe it is objectively better, but is it $170 better? For carrying a laptop and some books? Probably not. But they've invested so much time in the research that they feel committed to buying the optimal choice, not just an adequate choice. This happens with everything. They need running shoes, so they analyze pronation and cushioning and drop and stack height until they're convinced they need the $180 shoes instead of the $90 ones. They need a coffee maker, so they research pour-over versus French press versus AeroPress versus espresso machines until they've spent $400 on coffee equipment for their home instead of just buying a $30 coffee maker that makes coffee. They need a mattress, so they spend weeks researching foam density and coil systems and sleep trials until they're buying a $2,000 mattress instead of something half that price that would have been perfectly comfortable. The research makes them feel like they're being smart and responsible with their money because they're making informed decisions. But what's actually happening is that the research is just giving them permission to spend more by convincing them that the premium option is worth it. Here's another trap that gets smart people. They calculate the cost per use of items to justify higher prices, but they always overestimate how much they'll use the thing. They want to buy a $600 espresso machine, which seems expensive. But they calculate that a latte costs $5, and they get one maybe 3 times a week. That's $15 a week, or $780 a year. So if they buy the espresso machine, it pays for itself in less than a year, and then it's pure savings after that. The math is perfect. The logic is flawless. Except they're making 2 huge assumptions that probably won't hold true. First, they're assuming they'll actually use the espresso machine consistently enough to hit that break-even point. And second, they're assuming they would have actually spent that $15 a week on lattes if they didn't have the espresso machine. In reality, they use the machine enthusiastically for 2 months. Then it becomes a weekly thing. Then a monthly thing. And eventually it's just sitting on the counter taking up space while they go back to buying coffee. Because the espresso machine is too much hassle. And they definitely weren't spending $780 a year on lattes before. That was just a number they used to justify the purchase. Smart people do this cost per use calculation with everything. They buy expensive workout clothes because they'll last longer, and they work out all the time, so the cost per wear is actually lower than cheap clothes. Except they don't work out as much as they think they will. They buy high-end luggage because they travel frequently for work, and nice luggage lasts decades, so it's actually cheaper in the long run. Except they're not traveling as much as they projected. They buy premium tools for home projects because they'll use them for years, and quality tools make the work easier. Except they do maybe 2 projects a year. The math always works out on paper. It never works out in practice because humans are terrible at predicting their own future behavior. Then there's the whole category of what I call aspirational purchases, which is when smart people buy things related to the person they want to become rather than the person they are. They buy a nice camera because they're going to get into photography. They buy art supplies because they're going to start painting. They buy musical instruments because they're going to learn to play. They buy camping gear because they're going to start hiking more. They buy golf clubs because they're going to take up golf. And all of these purchases feel justified because they're about self-improvement and trying new things and expanding their horizons. But here's the pattern. The camera takes nice pictures for a week before it gets too complicated, and they go back to their phone. The art supplies sit unused in a closet. The guitar gets played enthusiastically for a month until the initial excitement wears off and practice becomes tedious. The camping gear gets used once. The golf clubs collect dust. What's happening is that smart people are buying the tools of an activity before they've proven to themselves that they'll actually stick with the activity. They skip the phase where you start with cheap equipment to see if you even like something before investing in good equipment. They jump straight to buying good equipment because that's what someone serious about the activity would do, and they imagine themselves as someone serious about the activity. But they're not actually serious about it yet. They just have an idea that it would be cool to be serious about it, and that idea costs hundreds of dollars every time it pops up. Here's what really makes the intelligent trap so dangerous. Smart people are good at making their spending sound reasonable when they explain it to others or to themselves. They're not being frivolous. They're optimizing. They're not being wasteful. They're investing in quality. They're not impulse buying. They're making research decisions. Every dollar spent has a justification that sounds logical if you don't think about it too hard. And this is exactly why they stay poor. Because if you can justify every purchase, you'll justify every purchase. There's no limit to the number of things you can convince yourself are worth buying if you're smart enough to come up with good reasons. The person who impulse buys random stuff at least knows they have a problem. They can look at their spending and see, okay, I bought a bunch of stuff I don't need. I need to stop doing that. It's obvious what the issue is. But the smart person looks at their spending and sees a series of rational decisions. The productivity apps make sense. The courses are investments. The premium products are justified by quality. The optimization gear is about efficiency. There's no obvious problem to fix because every individual purchase was reasonable. The problem is the cumulative effect of hundreds of reasonable purchases that add up to thousands of dollars spent on stuff that doesn't actually improve their life or financial situation. Let me show you what this looks like in actual numbers, because I think seeing it laid out makes it more real. Let's say you're a smart person making $80,000 a year, taking home about $5,000 a month after taxes. Your fixed expenses are $30,500 for rent, utilities, car, insurance, all that necessary stuff. That leaves you $1,500 for everything else. Now let's look at where that $1,500 goes. You're spending $50 a month on productivity apps and software subscriptions. That's $600 a year. You're spending $150 a month on courses and books and education content. That's $1,800 a year. You're spending $200 a month on premium versions of things where the regular version would have been fine because you researched and found the premium was objectively better. That's $2,400 a year. You're spending $100 a month on optimization gear and tools for various activities and hobbies. That's $200 a year. And you're spending another $100 a month on aspirational purchases for hobbies you're going to start. That's another $200 a year. That's $7,200 a year, or $600 a month, just on smart purchases that all made sense individually. And we haven't even covered food, social activities, or any fun spending yet. By the time you account for those, that $1,500 in discretionary income is completely gone, and you're saving basically nothing. You're making $80,000 a year, which is well above the median income, and you have no money. Not because you're irresponsible, but because you're too smart for your own good. You can logic yourself into justifying anything, and that skill is keeping you broke. Here's what wealthy people understand that smart broke people don't. Being smart about purchases isn't about finding the optimal choice for everything. It's about recognizing that most choices don't matter that much, and the money saved by choosing adequately instead of optimally adds up to real wealth over time. You don't need the best backpack. You need a backpack that works. You don't need the perfect productivity system. You need a system you'll actually use. You don't need premium everything. You need to distinguish between the few areas where premium actually matters and the many areas where it doesn't. Wealthy people ask themselves, will buying the more expensive version of this actually change my life in a meaningful way? Not, is the more expensive version objectively better? Because the answer to that second question is almost always yes, but that doesn't mean it's worth the price difference. The other thing wealthy people understand is that buying information and tools doesn't automatically translate to results. The course doesn't make you successful. Implementing what you learned makes you successful. The equipment doesn't make you fit. Actually working out makes you fit. The productivity app doesn't make you productive. Doing the work makes you productive. But smart broke, people convince themselves that buying the thing is the same as doing the thing, because buying the thing feels like progress. It's easier to spend $200 on a course than to actually do the hard work of applying the knowledge. It's easier to spend $2,000 on home gym equipment than to consistently work out. It's easier to buy productivity apps than to make hard decisions about how you spend your time. So how do you escape the intelligent trap if you recognize yourself in this? The first step is getting brutally honest about the difference between theoretical value and actual value. Yes, learning Python has theoretical value, but if you've bought 3 coding courses in the past 2 years and haven't finished any of them, the actual value to you is 0. Yes, the $250 backpack is objectively better than the $80 one, but if both would carry your stuff fine, the actual value of that $170 difference is 0. Stop buying based on theoretical value and start buying based on proven need. If you want to learn something, start with free resources first. If you stick with it for 3 months, then consider paying for a course. If you want to take up a new hobby, borrow or buy cheap equipment first. If you're still doing it 6 months later, then upgrade. If you need a thing, ask yourself if the cheaper version would work adequately, and if the answer is yes, buy that one. The second step is putting a monthly cap on optimization spending and treating it like any other budget category. Maybe you allow yourself $100 a month for courses, tools, apps, and aspirational purchases. That's it. Once you hit that limit, you're done until next month. This forces you to prioritize and make real choices about what's actually worth buying instead of justifying everything. The third step, and this is the hardest one, is recognizing that buying stuff is not the same as making progress. Progress is action, not acquisition. Taking the course matters. Buying the course doesn't. Working out matters. Buying equipment doesn't. Implementing systems matters. Buying apps doesn't. Stop rewarding yourself for purchases and start rewarding yourself for results. Look, I get it. If you're smart and curious and interested in self-improvement, it feels wrong to cheap out on things or to not invest in yourself. But here's what you need to understand. You're not investing in yourself when you buy stuff you don't use. You're just spending money and calling it investment to make yourself feel better about it. Real investment in yourself is free or cheap. It's reading books from the library. It's watching free YouTube tutorials and actually practicing what they teach. It's starting with what you have instead of buying what you think you need. The smart spending habit that keeps you poor isn't being dumb with money. It's being too smart for your own good and logicking yourself into staying broke. Stop doing that. Buy less, do more, and invest the money you're currently spending on optimization into actual investments that build wealth. Because the most intelligent choice you can make is recognizing that being smart about money means having money, not having good reasons for why you don't.